Up next on stage, we have another exciting panel featuring Samantha Jones, founder and CEO at Little Yellow Bird, Lisa Laing, founder at Eco Originals, and Martin Johnston, founder and co-pilot at Crafted Society. In this all-encompassing discussion, you'll hear from these eco-conscious brands and discover how they achieve success while simultaneously protecting our planet. They'll discuss the process of tracking every item from source to scale and the exact efforts they've made to help reduce their carbon footprint. You'll get an insider look at the production process and how crucial transparency is throughout the entire supply chain. Welcome to the stage, guys.
All right, well, guys, thanks so much for joining us today on the sustainability panel. So we're going to do what everyone always asks you to do, which is the quick, 30 to 60 second elevator pitch for you and your business. So, Lisa, why don't you take us away?
Sure. Hi. So I started the world's most eco-friendly nappy brand, or diapers, depending on where in the world that you are. And now I sold that 2 years ago, and now I am actually an e-commerce business coach. So I've won lots of awards and done lots of sustainability research and development on products, and I now help my clients to do the same.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us. Martin, you're up next, mate.
No worries. Thanks for having us. I'm Martin. I'm the co-founder of Crafted Society together with my wife, Lisa. And we started Crafted Society really with the sole purpose to use transparent craftsmanship to help inspire, empower, and educate the next generation. We launched the brand in 2016, and we're solely focused now on becoming the leading subscription-led luxury consumer goods brand, which uses luxury as a force for good.
I love it. Beautiful. And Samantha, last but not least.
I'm the founder of a brand called Little Yellow Bird, and we make fully organic, zero waste, fully transparent apparel. We predominantly focused in the uniform sector, so we supply around 400 businesses with ethical uniforms, and for us that means that they're fully traceable right back to the farms where the cotton is grown, and we also can take back the fibre, the used uniforms at the end of life and turn them back into new fibres as well.
Awesome. And I'll introduce myself as well. So my name's Josh Howard. I'm the founder and CEO of Australian sustainability brand Single Use Ain't Sexy. I have a little product demo for you guys because, never want to miss an opportunity. We develop these little dissolvable hand soap tablets, which you put in our reusable glass bottles, mix it with water, it dissolves, and then it comes out as a thick white foam that you wash your hands with. So one of these can stop 25 single-use plastic bottles from landfill every year. So I think, why don't we kick off, Samantha, something that you mentioned that I think is really interesting is sourcing sustainable materials. So how do you start? Where do you look? And what are you looking for to make sure that all the materials that you're sourcing are both sustainable and also ethical?
Yeah, well, for us, we focus on natural fibres. So we use cotton and merino. So our cotton is all 100% organic rain-fed cotton. And in terms of our merino, we use ZQ Merino, which is a certification as well. So what we're looking for is a range of things from certifications, but also we've built strong relationships with all of our suppliers, and how we've built that up over the years has been a lot of time spent with our suppliers. So certifications is one thing, but also our approach has been very relationship-based.
And Lisa, what about the nappy trade? How does sourcing materials go in that sector?
Oh, look, I have to say the creation of our nappies was quite an interesting project. We set out, thought it might take us 6 months to develop a nappy. What we found is that there were lots of nappies in the world that were supposedly eco, but they were really expensive. And so creating affordable eco is, of course, a topic that we wanted to talk about today. But we thought it would take us 6 months. It took us 2.5 years. And we got lots of no's, and we kept saying, well, actually, we'd like a yes. So found it quite hard to reinvent an existing baby nappy with lots of eco materials. But yeah, lots of trial and error too, because some materials that you might want to apply into a nappy just, we used bamboo for a while, but the fibres on bamboo were peeling on a nappy. So I think eco materials can, in some cases, particularly in new product development, take a lot of time and money, because you have to actually test and find out what works and doesn't.
And Martin, you guys are kind of working at the higher luxury end of that kind of craft. Are you still able to keep prices down by using sustainable products, or is it always going to be more expensive?
Well, there's been a lot of advancements in sustainable, especially in the recycled area, when it comes to luxury, because we pride ourselves on the highest quality, the longest durability, etc. So there's been a lot of advances in the last 5 years. We're able to keep prices relatively fair because we're a direct-to-consumer brand, and that's the biggest advantage we've got, that there's no middlemen putting their piece into the pie to keep the prices high. And I think what we've been able to do now through these advancements is really focus our entire product creation pipeline on the whole reuse, recycle, repurpose concept. So yeah, I believe you can still make a highly sustainable luxury brand and still make it very, very affordable to actually the mass, not the very few elite people who are out there.
Lisa, did you want to jump in and say something?
Did you see me sitting here pondering that question?
Mate, go, the floor is yours. Go for it.
Look, when I first bought my nappies out 10 years ago, I would disagree with that, in the sense that I feel eco materials were a lot more expensive than more traditional, particularly plastic-based materials. I think, well, to give you an example, when we launched our brand, we were the first and only nappy brand in the world to package our nappies in compostable film. So rather than putting them in the normal poly, packaging, we actually used a cornstarch packaging, and that cost us 8 times the unit price per bag of nappies than a traditional poly bag would have. But essentially, I don't feel that customers were necessarily wanting to pay more for that, or our marketing angle was not to make them pay more for that, but to absorb that. I think that some of the eco materials have definitely come down in price since then, which is fantastic. And there are more options available now too. So they're no longer made in compostable in my brand. They now use they actually put them into paper bags, which is really cool. But yes, I don't always think that eco equals, the same margin at the same price point, but I think you either put your product at a higher price or you absorb it because you know that you're able to do something better as a brand.
It's interesting just to pick up on something that Martin mentioned about being direct to consumer, because we're direct to consumer as well. And the relationship you have with customers from a packaging point of view, I think, is fascinating. So we're at the point now where people will call you out if you package your products in something that's not eco-friendly, which is awesome. And when we first started, there were 2 days where we ran out of paper tape, so we used plastic tape for 2 days, and we didn't hear the end of it. And it was a great reminder that people care what you send your products in. I'm seeing a lot now reused boxes. So there's these machines which are cutting out new box shapes from like old supermarket boxes and stuff, which I thought was really cool. So, Sam, as someone who works in the rag trade, as we call it in the biz, I assume, what are your customers looking for when they're looking for specific certifications that you may or may not have?
Yeah, there's a whole range of certifications, especially in our industry. 2 that we kind of adhere to are the Fair Trade and GOTS certifications. But that doesn't mean that they are the only certifications, and in some instances, some of our smaller factories don't have those certifications either. And that one of the reasons is because it can be cost prohibitive for those really smaller suppliers to have those certifications. I think the thing that I've really found is that you can't just rely on any specific certification. So it does come back to, you know, what's the gut feel that you get when you walk into a factory. You have to take these decisions from a range of data points.
Yeah. Martin, what about you? You're someone who's dealing with artisans directly, I imagine, on a daily basis almost. How does that work with them?
So we are very fortunate that we were able to find best-in-class finished goods makers in Italy, and they are already supplying the cream of the French and the Italian maisons, who are heavily certified in all types of labour practices and factory working conditions, etc. So the fact that those big conglomerates have already signed off on who our partners are has definitely helped. We decided to take a slightly different approach, in so much as when we were trying to find who these artisans were, the big houses in luxury, they always talk about craftsmanship. The one thing they fail to actually mention is who these people are, right? They keep it a very close guarded secret. So after we had found them and talked to them and asked them about what their biggest challenges were, they all said the same thing. And that was, look at our workforce, Mark. You know, they're all getting on. They're all getting older. So we're actually struggling to identify the next generation. And that's kind of the aha moment where we said, all right, we need to do something about this. And we're going to put transparency central to what we stand for. And we're going to actually put these guys back on the pedestal and give them their rightful place back as the true heroes of luxury. So we promote all of our makers, from finished goods to components, right the way down to our raw materials. So we tell everybody who the tanneries are, where we get our organic cottons, where we're getting our regenerated nylon, which is 100% recycled. So, you know, we kind of took the approach of, instead of looking for certifications, we would just embrace complete transparency.
That's cool. I love that. And how involved are your customers with each of those steps? Like, are your customers familiar with the individual artisans? Are they really connected with it all? Or?
Yeah, like if you walk into one of our stores in Amsterdam, you know, we don't have pictures of celebrities wearing our gear. We've got pictures of the artisans, right, all over the walls. So people know these people by name because we name every single product after one of the makers. So they go, oh, who's Mario? And then they walk into the store and see a big picture of him, or Albertina or Marco or whoever. So, yeah, we're very much true to our word that we put the makers central to everything we stand for. And they love it. Like they're very humble people, right, as well. And they've worked for the big houses, but we're the only brand that's really, truly ever acknowledged that these people exist.
I love
kind of
that.
Refreshing. Yeah.
Back to the old tribal village thing where you knew who the best leather maker was or shoemaker, like, and having a trade back then was like, you know, your reputation was staked upon the products you produce, but we've lost all of that. So I love that you're bringing that back.
Thank you.
Lisa, you talked about tribes. You don't make the world's most highly reviewed nappy brand without creating a killer tribe, I imagine, of mums and dads. Talk to us a little bit how on earth you did that.
Yeah, right. You're exactly right. So I think a big part of the plan with our nappy brand, or how we managed to roll it out, is to focus on subscription selling first of all. So again, similar to Martin, direct to customer, and obviously always were looking at the route of going down retail, and had some retail, but not the big retailers. But definitely creating a relationship with your customer, you know, leverages your brand in value because you own the customer relationship, and the customer feels more connected to you because they are able to be part of the story. And we for us, because it's a subscription, which is on a set cycle, we were able to really grow, starting with a trial pack. So giving our clients the opportunity to try the nappies before they settled into a subscription. But you're absolutely right. You know, in the early days, we were exceptional at sending video messages to our customers to, you know, I remember there was once we actually had a shipment of stock was due into the warehouse, which meant we had to clear a supply invoice before it arrived, and we didn't have enough money in the bank, as often happens when you're in fast-growing product brands. So we did a video to our entire database asking them to buy our nappies and support us so we could continue to bring this awesome product to the world. And, you know, we sold like $120,000 worth of nappies in 48 hours. It was just like, woof, it was all on, right? We got the payments cleared. So I think creating a relationship with your clients where they feel connected to the brand, especially one with an eco aspect to it, is really important.
We had
completely
a really
agree.
We had a really similar situation to that just before lockdown, actually, and we had an entire warehouse full of inventory. And because we supplied heavily into events and hospitality, when we had a bunch of orders start cancelling, we suddenly had a very full warehouse but not enough cash to pay all of our staff. And so we reached out to our community, to our customer base, and said, hey, this is the situation. You can help us by buying a T-shirt. And yeah, similar numbers over a similar period of time. And it just, your customer base can really save you in times like that when you're a growing and young company.
Which is why it's so important to not have a middleman, I believe, for an up-and-coming eco brand these days, owning your customer direct. I think there's so much more leverage in that space.
It's a really interesting point. I think for us and Single Use Ain't Sexy, the connection with the customer is the only thing we have. We've got this great brand, this great product, but these relationships are, they're like friendships, which I know can sound a little bit cliche, but it is about creating relationships with your customers where they feel like you're a friend and not a business. And so some of the exchanges and interactions we have with them are unbelievable. And in the sustainability space, I feel like there's an expectation that those connections will be even more intimate because you all feel like you're on this kind of, eco trail together.
Especially because you started the brand usually because you had a purpose or a passion. I think that's the really wonderful thing about e-com brands that have started because they wanted to solve a problem. So I feel that the people who buy into the story, they want to stay connected to the founder of the brand. They want to stay connected as the business grows and feel like they were part of that support crew that got that business to leverage. I love it.
I agree with you. Martin, I want to ask you about some of the press coverage you guys have gotten. I think sometimes people think it's a sustainability-focused brands or, a bit more grassroots. You guys are bucking that trend. You've been covered in the New York Times, Vogue, Elle, Forbes, Vanity Fair, the list goes on. How have you done that? What are some hacks that you can teach everyone watching?
Worked for 25 years in this industry and I called in every favour that I could, right? Because when we bootstrapped this from day one until just before the pandemic when we brought on our first round of investors. So the early press that we got, actually the New York Times article feature that they did on us was really by coincidence. A buddy of mine in London was sitting next to Vanessa Friedman, who's the editor of the New York Times fashion department at Paris Fashion Week. She just explained that they brought out, this was in 2018, they just brought out a story about the unknown makers in Italy and how subcontract labor, is the worst kept secret in the industry, but the end customer doesn't know about it. So she'd run this story and he's like, oh, you've got to talk to my mate Martin Amsterdam because his whole brand is all about bringing forward these master makers into the spotlight in Italy. So I got a call at Christmas and I thought it was my mate winding me up, just going, yes, this is so-and-so from the New York Times and we want to come to Amsterdam, do a feature on you. And I'm just like, put the phone down. And then the phone went again. And I was like, are you serious? And they're like, yeah. So they came and they did it. And I think on the back of that, we started to get a bit of groundswell. But I also believe that we were a little bit of ahead of the curve back in 2016 when we launched. But since then, this whole notion of transparency, especially in luxury, because it's the one area of fashion that you demand to be the most ethical and fair, right? And all of these stories started to come out and about. So, we've kind of been riding the crest of that wave. And what's nice is that in August of this year, we're creating La Notte degli Artigiani, which is the Night of the Artisan. And we're holding it in Tolentino in Marche, where we're inviting 100 of our artisans to come together and press and investors just to celebrate them and to thank them and to give them their night of honor, if you like.
It's very cool. It's very cool. What about Samantha and Lisa? Do you two have any stories of press coverage or opportunities like that don't come all the time that you just grabbed hold of and took advantage of?
I think that people think that all of this can happen by accident sometimes. I mean, we get asked constantly, how do you get so many mentions in the media? And my answer is always, I just make it as easy as possible for them to want to write about us. So, drafting a press release for them, they'll always change it. But, having a Dropbox with a bunch of images and your logo and some, captions from a couple of people in your team, just kind of serving it up on a plate so that, they're all really busy. And then, and then also developing some of those relationships as well. So I didn't come from an industry background in this area at all, but I have nurtured some of those relationships and, taken the time to make friends with people that, will write articles about you.
What about you, Lisa?
Probably award winning is what the route to media that we took. So winning Telstra Business Awards, which is obviously a prestigious award in Australia. I think we've been runner up 4 times for that. So each year that you're involved in applying and attending awards ceremonies, etc., there's a lot of media attached to that. So I've definitely been, received a fair bit of media through that. And then I also, for me personally, I've also done a fair bit of charity work, and I think often that goes hand in hand with a sustainable business, is that the business owner has, altruistic desires to do more for the world. And I think that certainly for me has achieved a fair bit of media for my charitable stuff as well.
I love it. I think the interesting lesson for me here and from our own experiences is there's no one way to get media coverage. And I think what we often forget is that the media are people. So the New York Times happened because a person and a relationship evolved so that you could have that opportunity. So I think sometimes we forget that it's about just relationships, not necessarily just a logo. Samantha, I wanted to come back and ask you about suppliers. So when you're sourcing materials, how are you auditing or verifying the supplier's performance and sustainability credentials? Because sometimes it's really hard to know who's doing what, especially if things are being produced or manufactured in other places.
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, there's the personal, connection. So prior to COVID, and then I actually had a baby just before that. But prior to that, I was in India 3 times a year, so spending up to a month at a time actually with our suppliers, especially when we had big productions going through. Obviously, with travel restrictions now, that's quite different. So we do have a third-party auditor that comes in both from a quality and an ethics perspective. But we also get copies of our certifications and things like that. But yeah, it's really tough now that we can't actually physically go over there because that was a big part of it. But yeah, we've just had to kind of pivot and adjust as things are changing. But as soon as borders open back up, we'll be over there again.
Lisa, Martin, any key insights on how to audit suppliers?
Ladies first.
For me, I think a big part of it comes down to relationships. So I've been helping a few of my clients now to source and create sustainable solutions that they obviously have a product idea and want to match it. And I think a really big part of it is having manufacturing partners that you can trust. So creating the relationship, I can get different answers from different people. And even in my journey of starting the nappies, I got, a lot of no's from a lot of different manufacturers until I found one who said, okay, maybe let's try it. And so I feel that finding a good manufacturing partner is absolutely key to being able to, obviously you can do lots of audits and you should, but I think having a good partner is really important too, or several. In Samantha's case, lots probably.
I'd agree. I think, let's say from a more holistic standpoint, when you start out, my advice would be to have a very clear purpose and have a very clear story. We wanted to promote in the products that we started out with, the best-in-class makers in Italy. As we got into the story, we started to find out that the actual Made in Italy label has been want of a better word, it's been kind of mistreated by many brands that stick the label on their products, but actually have the majority of the product itself built in a developing nation, and it's shipped to Italy just for the last part, right? So we wanted to go a step further, and that's why identifying and highlighting where do we get our cardboard boxes from for our shoes, where do we get the laces from, the metal work for our bags, all the way through to who are the tanneries that we're working with, right? So because we're so transparent about it, it's also our responsibility to ensure that the suppliers we work with, especially on the raw material side, are ethical and are certified, and in a majority of cases are also introduced to us by our artisan partners, because they're also supplying for the other big certified labels. So we just wanted to ensure that we stayed 100% true to our brand ethos, which was, made in Italy, 100% made in Italy, backed up by the facts of 100% made in Italy.
Sometimes it's hard to know what percentages of these things, especially, foods and where the ingredients are coming from and all that kind of stuff. I want to talk about impact and how we all track our own impact. So, Samantha, maybe you could kick it off and kind of tell us a little bit about what your goals are, what your traction's been to date, and how you're kind of calculating that.
Yeah, sure. So we measure a few different things. Water savings is one of them. So all of our cotton is rain-fed, so we don't rely on irrigation. The dyeing system is also closed loop, so we're able to save a tremendous amount of water. It's roughly about 12 million litres of water a year. We also measure how many pesticides aren't required in our process, and also how much plastic we've been able to eliminate from our supply chain. So just one example of that was when we first started the business, every individual T-shirt came wrapped in plastic, and we looked into alternatives, different biodegradable options. But in the end, we actually just decided to use a cotton tie to tie around the product. So yeah, our products previously came wrapped in individual plastic, but we were able to negotiate that whole component being removed, and there was warranty concerns, like who would pay for the product if it got damaged, but we actually have never had any issue with that. And so we've been able to prevent several hundred kilos of plastic from ever entering our shore. But the key thing for me was finding out ways that you could really easily measure. I think I spent about 2 years trying to figure out and think, and I completely overcomplicated how we could actually measure and track these things. And then in the end, what we've done is we've just gone with, research data and then extrapolated it based on how many tons we are producing. So of course there'd be a margin of error there, but it's the easiest way that we can do it, and it means that we can instantly tell you the data, and we can report on that monthly or quarterly. Every customer can get an impact report based on how much water, how much pesticides, and how much fair trade labour their order has generated.
Cool. I love that idea of every customer getting a report like that. Lisa, what about you? How did you guys track your impact and then communicate it with your customers?
I think it's tricky to track impact, to be honest, mainly because the metrics are not really, that common to find. So for us, we had our nappies, the compostability of them tested by the CSIRO here in Australia, which was probably not as complete as I would like it to be. But, we were able to, again, like Samantha, extrapolate out and say, well, we, for example, before I sold the brand 2 years ago, we had saved more than 12 million nappies from going into landfill. And I'm not saying our nappies didn't also go into landfill, because they did, but the statistics that we got from our reporting was that, a traditional nappy or diaper takes 500 plus years to break down, and ours were a fraction of that, probably 2 to 10 years. So we were able to kind of look at it from that perspective. I do think that finding measures to track that stuff is a bit tricky, but I also agree it's great for an eco brand to be able to portray that to their customers in a measurable sense.
Yeah, and I think if you're transparent about how you're coming to those numbers and those calculations, then people are really accepting of the fact that you're making your best estimations based on what, the research you've done.
Exactly.
And Martin, just to finish off with you, mate, do you have any comments on, goals around impact or traction in that regard?
I'd agree with the other panelists in terms of, that it's a real balancing act, especially when, you don't have unlimited resources available to you to be able to track down to the smallest granular item. And that's why when we decided to go transparent, we said, look, we're probably going to cut more than we're going to do things right, but we're open about it and come with us on the journey, right? So, we've got sustainability objectives. Our objectives are by 2025 to only be an upcycled or a recycled luxury consumer goods brand. But the impact that we're really driven by is our purpose, right? And that is, how many artisans can we get on our platform to promote them? And through our social responsibility, we're donating 1% of our revenues back into creating scholarship funds that pairs people in need with the artisans, so we can actually create a circular solution towards their original challenge facing the longevity of their craft. So, the more kids we get into scholarship programs and the more artisans around the world we get onto the platform, I think that's what's really, that's what gets me up every morning. That's where the passion comes from.
Thank you so much, and I hope everyone enjoyed our discussion.